Did you record?
No, not yet.
Yeah, don't forget to like, comment, and subscribe to like all the social media. So
That's right.
Absolutely.
All right, so I know you wanted to. Actually, I did. I ended up having some comments about the inauguration, actually. But I'll let you. I know you wanted to talk about that. There was something that you had to get off your chest.
Oh God, yeah. I mean, let's talking about the inauguration first, like in general.
Okay.
Just even with Trump like out of the office, away from like social media, it's been kind of this hard to say this euphoria like around a little bit where I don't have to worry about this guy empowering racist, and like we have an adult in the White House that I'm not worrying about his tweets and his like racist executive orders and whatnot. So I mean, it's definitely been a nice to have, and
it's been nice to see Biden automatically come up with like 17 executive orders reversing a lot of what Trump did. So I thought that was great.
The Keystone Pipeline, like that was a first one. Dropping the racist freaking Muslim ban, dropping the the stupid wall. Just so much stuff. And I was reading today, like they like when it comes terms to like the coronavirus response, like they're just it's gonna be rough. It is gonna be rough.
Yeah.
Dr. Fauci also said that he feels kind of happier to like because he was silenced, right? He was silenced during the coronavirus response. So he's a little bit happier there. They're not restricting like what he says at all. And that's just great. I mean, for all those who like complain about like Trump being silenced on Twitter, like First Amendment rights or whatnot, like Trump loves gag. His wife has a gag order, right? He put a gag order on his first wife, right? He has put gag orders on federal agencies. So like you guys don't talk about that. But like when the guy incites a riot and they silence him for it, they're like, oh, First Amendment, like get out of here. Get out of here. Get out of here. So like there are lots more things that when you start focusing on with or worrying about our First Amendment rights that does not involve a racist inciting a riot trying to get people killed. Right. So that's just my 2 cents on that. I don't know if you had a chance to watch the inauguration. Did you see Amanda?
Yes, I did.
Amanda Gorman.
That's what I wanted to talk about. One name, Amanda Gorman. She was the poem was fire, pure fire. I loved every single word of it.
Yes.
And I'm going to print out a copy of it.
Yes, I actually think I have like someone sent me like a written copy of it. It's not loading right now, unfortunately, but there are lots of great things about her poem. I think one of the things that really spoke to me about people wanting to tear America apart instead of just share it, right? So rather tear America apart than share it. Talking about America's not broken, but just not finished yet, right? So just kind of this call to unity and just being friendly to your fellow man, right? So there's been such divisive speak for such a long time. It is great to see that she kind of helped with just her poem and her words, had everyone just feeling somewhat hopeful again. And I mean, I started following on Instagram and she's like super humble and happy. Book's #1, have like a whole plethora of followers now. So definitely happy to see someone like that trying to, just being successful and whatnot. And she also had a speech impediment like Joe Biden, right? So she overcame that as well. So definitely happy for her and like everything that she's done and whatnot. So
yeah. I mean, so I'm just looking at a little bit of it right now. I mean, every couplet, every few bars was just like something like super insightful. I just want to read this little piece right here. We've braved the belly of the beast. We've learned that quiet isn't always peace. This is just at the beginning of the poem right here, but just
Mm,
that little bit right there is so true, so potent. The belly of the
mm,
beast. We got through the last 4 years, right?
yeah,
And then the quiet isn't always peace. These people who feel that they can speak out, who've been emboldened to speak out and say these racist things or come out and be like the Proud Boys and all these other
yeah,
groups. Um, they were quiet before. You haven't heard from them in a very long time. You haven't heard this kind of rhetoric in a very long time.
yeah,
And it's true. Just because they weren't speaking doesn't mean they weren't there,
yeah,
right?
yeah,
So I mean, she hit so many great points, and
yeah.
I
She
mean,
was
I'm definitely
great.
going to take a minute to listen to it again and
Yeah,
again and save it for my kids. So
yeah, absolutely. She's
it's
young.
great.
She's young. She's only 23, I believe, right? So
And I think she's the youngest
she
national
is the
poet
youngest
laureate.
poet. She was the
So
youngest poet. So that is awesome. Totally happy for her, right? It's a call to arms for all of us, right? Just to do better
absolutely,
by ourselves, by each other and whatnot. So and it's just great to see her kind of go through that for us, right? Or try to just remind us of that. So that's great. And look, at the beginning of every presidency, like what are your thoughts? Like we defeated Trump, we haven't defeated Trumpism, right? Inaugurations happened, right? Right now, I don't want to get too much in the weeds of like politics because let's face it, like you're tired of it, I'm tired of it. Um, we need to take a little bit of a break from it, but eventually we have to start talking about it eventually later. But one of the things that's a little concerning now is that so Trump's been impeached, right? He's out of office, he's been impeached. The Senate is now thinking of trying to convict him, and this is kind of where the weeds happen, right? This is kind of where like things need to happen. And I don't know if there's enough votes to convict the guy, right? Sadly, right? Mitch McConnell, like one of the most vocal Republican like opponents, who pretty much said, yeah, this happened because of him, right? Is also kind of trying to delay the 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 trial for 2 weeks so Trump can get like ready. And I mean, to me, this is almost cut and dry, right? Like this guy started a riot, try to get people killed, right? He empowered people to storm a Capitol while Congress is in session, right? He needs to be held accountable. I wonder if some people on the conservative side on the Republican Party will have the strength of character. Like we need like I think 17 like Republicans to vote yes on this conviction. I don't know if they got the votes. And
I know they have 10. That's what I've been reading.
well,
You know,
so this is what happened. 10 Republicans on the House side voted to impeach him. Only 10, right? So the articles of impeachment passed with all Democratic votes and 10 more Republican votes. Now those articles of impeachment goes over to the House, to the Senate, right? And they need to vote on a conviction now, right? So, and that needs to be 2/3 of Congress, right? So it can't just be majority rule. It has to be 2/3. And I was reading today that if he was being threatened by members of his own party, that if he votes to convict Trump, that he's not going to be leader of his own party anymore, right?
yeah.
So yeah, this just it's just so much crap going on with that. Not to mention he's thinking about bringing back filibusters and whatnot, which is a tool to help kind of delay legislation, which would benefit like Biden and whatnot, since the Democrats have majority in the House. So
You
like
talking
it's
about McConnell bringing back
yeah,
filibuster?
he wants to bring back filibusters, because he was trying to like draft some power sharing with the head of like the Senate Democrat there. So
He was trying to
which
keep
is
them
really
from getting into the leadership positions or something like
well,
that.
yeah. I mean, what he's doing is he's trying to bring back filibusters, and that prevents like votes from happening, right? From
Well,
things getting
filibusters never went away. I mean, it's always been something that they can use to try to
it's
stall. It's a stall tactic. Is
It
basically.
is. It definitely is. And like it kind of went away a little bit and then he brought it back. So they kind of took it away a little bit under the Obama administration because when they lost their 60, um like Republicans were like delaying stuff, like delaying like all sorts of bills and delaying approvals of the federal judges and whatnot. And when they took, then when the Democrats lost the White House, that kind of bit them in the butt because now they don't need 60 to like approve things anymore. Like for example, they forced two Supreme Court judges. They didn't need, normally you get 60 votes to approve that. Not anymore, right? So and
That's what
there's
was
so many
interesting to
laws
me.
that they've just forced through, like the tax law earlier, like in early in Trump's
Yeah,
um early in Trump's term. So yeah, it's frustrating. There's a lot that we have to do. I don't want to dwell too much into it because again, we've just gone through so much
well, I
already.
just think it's funny that
Um,
they were able to put this judge in place like in what, like 2 weeks or a week or something like
oh
that.
yeah,
This last judge that Trump appointed, but
yeah,
for some reason now we have to wait all this extra time to put the trial going for Trump, and
oh yeah.
it's just they always find a way to
It's
BS
politics.
everything. So my
It's
stance on it is that I think he absolutely deserves to have the, I guess, unofficial removal from office
mhm,
take place when they convict him in the Senate. It needs to happen because
yes,
you need to make sure that, for one, as a taxpayer, I don't want to support somebody who supported an attempted who pushed people to stage a coup and stage the Capitol and do all this crazy stuff. He
yeah,
incited that riot. I don't want to support the habits of somebody who did that. And if he isn't convicted, then that means that it'll be my money paying for his $1 million travel um, expenses and
yeah. His
his
pension,
secret
his security.
service detail and his pension and all that stuff.
Hmm.
So um, and he'll he was a one-term guy, so he might be able to run again. It's like
Yes.
some read that some Republicans were saying that they just think that you impeach him, but they don't want to vote to remove him from office, and they just feel that he'll be ousted from the party just from his actions or
No.
whatever. That doesn't mean anything. That doesn't mean anything to him.
No.
If you
No.
don't go all the way through with it, then he'll just be right back, like
Yeah.
a
I
cancer
mean, if
almost.
they don't vote to convict him, right, and he somehow is able to run for president again, right? What does that happen with like what social media is doing, right?
Yeah,
Like, because right now he's banned, and rightfully so, right? If he's able to get the Republican nomination again, would he be back on social media again? Will we allow that, or do we really want to go through 4 more years of that crap? Um, like
I don't
what the
think he'll be allowed
Republican,
back.
huh?
I think the ban's going to be permanent for one.
I Yeah, it can be permanent. Like I read that when he was banned, they lost $51 billion in market value, like so, Twitter and Facebook, but at the same time, fake news went down by like 71%.
Yeah, yeah,
So yeah, it's ultimately a money thing, and like I hope they do the right thing. I think the problem with the conservative parties that or Republican parties that they're too scared to kind of just blow everything up, right? Like and this is what frustrates me a lot about not just the Republican Party, but a lot of us in societies, like we cater to white supremacists, we cater to racist, right? Um, One thing and Joe Biden said in his inauguration speech is that us having to rise up against white supremacy, right? Never has that really been said in any inauguration speech. And like Rand Paul like said something like, well, he's like talking as if we're all like white supremacists. I'm like, well, shit, if you freaking cater to freaking white supremacists, you are, right? If you're not afraid to freaking, if you're not afraid to tell these guys no, right? And like fight against it, then that's what you are. So I mean,
yeah.
it's
If you're just standing by, then silence is consent, as they say, right? So if
yes,
you're standing by, then
yes, yes.
you're part of the problem as well.
Yeah. they need to kind of just stand up and take their party back, right? If they talk about values and whatnot, well, it's time to kind of show up, right? And it's going to
They
be
need to
rough for
change the
them.
perception. They need to change the perception of the party.
Yeah.
And honestly, I think it's been it's been damaged to the point where I, I I don't see them winning the next election either. Like I think they really took a
It's
hit, and whoever is the next Republican candidate, you're really going to have to prove that you're not part of the Trump people. You're not part of this whole like, hey, we need to get back. The old guard with Mitch McConnell and all those other people
well,
talking about
yeah.
that craziness. You're really gonna have to prove that your ideals and your philosophies as a Republican, like, hey, like less government intervention and more of the people in the states and businesses and stuff like that. You're really gonna have to prove that that's the way we should move forward and why, and not just say like, hey, conservative values and all this other stuff, because that's for most of the people in the country now. You've taken too much of a hit. People really just equate the Republican Party to the racist party. That's what you are, and I don't
Yeah.
see how you can win without changing that. So it's going to take them a while. I don't see them winning the next election either.
Yeah,
I just
well,
really,
like you talk about next presidential election, so usually it's very rarely do presidents lose a second term. I think
it can still happen, man. You
it
can't.
just happened. It just happened, right?
Well,
Uh,
we knew he was going to lose, right?
did we? I
Well,
mean,
I'll take that back. No, we didn't.
yeah.
I'm glad that we did, because it's like, okay, somebody in this country has a conscience. When
I,
you
I
find that a majority of people like were like, no, like he doesn't deserve to be president. But I'm talking about this next one. They're gonna have to find somebody that is really special to even make somebody think about voting Republican.
well, yeah, no, you're absolutely right. I will say this. I would argue that he only lost because of how badly he did with the coronavirus pandemic and how it affected our economy, right? So, which is sad because he's done so many things that should disqualify him from ever running before we got to the pandemic. But at the same, I mean, just it's just so many things. But at the same time, like the next person for the next presidential election, like Joe Biden, he's an older guy, right? Like, say what we want about like Americans and how we cater values. We also look at aesthetics. He's going to look much older in 4 years. I wonder. I wonder what they're going to do is they're going to try to get a super young guy to try to run against him, right? And I wonder if they. I would like so they've lost elections with Mitt Romney. They've lost elections with um, John McCain, right? And these guys were more moderate, decent people, right? Definitely weren't racist. They didn't cater to racism, right, at all. Say what you want about them. Hell, and Mitt Romney even marched in the Black Lives Matter protest. But like clearly they stepped away from that type of Republican and he went skewed way right to this more just racist, bigoted, you know, type of person. Like it's just frustrating. I hope they change. I hope they kind of figure out that I hope they just don't follow Trump, right? Lindsey Graham says that he still thinks of Trump as a Republican leader, right, and doesn't want to convict him.
That's what
And
I'm saying.
like
If that's the
that's the
way that they
frustrating
decide to
thing,
go, I don't see
right?
them winning
Yeah.
anytime
So
soon.
I have no idea what's going to happen in 4 years. I hope for all of our sakes that they convict Trump and they move away from this racist ideology, right? Because that benefits everybody, right? Um, and hopefully they just don't dig deep and dig in further to this. I did want to kind of want to say my piece a little bit, and I wanted to thank you for like giving me this time because when we talk about elections, right, around this time, we always talk about coming together and being just trying to love each other, coming together, trying to understand each other and whatnot, right? And I kind of want to direct like my attention towards people who are consider themselves moderates. I don't know if you have these conversations, Nicholas, but I tend to have a lot of these political discussions with people who call themselves like moderates and whatnot. And it's frustrating to me, right? And I kind of want to talk about like how these very similar I get these very similar interactions with these guys. Unfortunately, these people who call themselves large libertarians, and I kind of want to go through a couple of like scenarios that I've been through. So I remember a couple weeks ago, like maybe I think it was the last week or 2 weeks ago, when the riot happened, right? And I posted on Facebook that, like, okay, just remember, guys, that the guys who are rioting in the Capitol right now at this moment is not BLM and is not Antifa, right?
Yep.
And huh?
I said I saw that. Saw the
Yeah,
post.
and I remember. I don't know if you saw the whole post. I remember a high school teacher, former high school teacher of mine, chimed in, right? And he comes in and he goes, well, no political party will submit that they have like extremes on their end. And I'm like kind of floored at this while saying, oh, we're being under attack right now. And you're talking about both sides, right?
Yeah.
When Al Qaeda attacked us on 9/11, we didn't talk about both sides. Like we were angry, we were upset, right? We didn't want to hold people. I mean, we wanted to hold people, those people who did it, responsible. And here's this guy talking about both sides, and I called him out on this to falsely equivalent. And then he goes in this long spiel of, well, I'm middle of American, and I don't people need people to like me to understand my ideals, and I care about anyone and respect everyone who, regardless of what they vote for. And this he just goes into this like this self preservational spiel, and I'm like, what the hell? Like,
Yep.
what are you doing right now? The Capitol's under attack, and you're talking about both sides now. You're trying to convince that you're some middle American. And I got into it with another person recently that did something similar when we were talking about like the Capitol riots. So I posted something by like AOC, right? And this person has like a hate boner for AOC for whatever reason. And for whatever, when we got into this argument, this person started saying things like, oh, what I pointed out, like they killed a cop during the Capitol riot. This person responded to me, is like, well, do you know how many cops got beat up during BLM protests? And I'm like, how are you comparing both of these right now? Like, what sense does that make? Like, no, seriously, think about this, right? Like, these guys, the people who attacked the Capitol, right, based off of false information by a president who lost the election, went in and killed a cop, right? And were looking to pretty much take over the government, essentially, right? And you're comparing that to BLM riots when they beat up cops, when part of the narrative is cops over policing and killing black men or killing black people, right, in their sleep, right, choking them to death, right? So how can you honestly compare the two of that? And one of the things I that just frustrates me about this kind of person that claims that they're in the middle, like these two people claim that they're in the middle, they claim that they're moderates, and what they're doing is they're falsely equating two sides, right? And what you're doing is you're seeing two sides as equally bad and then saying you're in the middle. That's not being in the middle. That's not taking a stance, right? Like, they need to understand that history does not remember moderates, right? MLK was hated in his day. He's not considered a moderate, right? Abraham Lincoln, not considered a moderate, right? Muhammad Ali, not considered a moderate, right? Muhammad Ali, huge advocate for religious freedom. We don't give him enough credit for that, by the way. Um, so I don't understand why these people tend to have this air of hubris, of arrogance, to say, "Oh, I'm in the middle." And like I remember one of these people when I was arguing with, they were like, "Oh, well, you don't know how things work." And this person is like a lot younger than I am, and just probably started like This person was probably voted like for the first time in the last election. So like I was like floored. I was pissed. so so in this time, like I want to talk to these guys that claim that they're in the middle. It's important that we find middle ground with people that we don't agree with, right? But you can't find middle ground if you don't have any ground to stand on, right? If you're just picking a position, if you see both sides as equally bad, right? You're not standing on any ground here. You're adjusting your position to two sides and you don't really care what side is worse or what their actual positions are. You're just saying you're in the middle because you think you're better, right? That's not how we're going to get over this hump. That's not how we're going to come together and understand each other and love each other. So I really wanted to bring that out. The way that we fixed some of the problems that were like happening in this country is by first understanding like your position. And for starters, let me kind of go back a little bit. I don't want to say or belittle anyone that claims to be in the middle of things, right? I get it. Sometimes you don't want to, sometimes you want to just kind of stay on the fence because you don't want to take too much blame for supporting one side or another, right? And that, I get that that makes sense. But just understand you're not a hero. And that does not make you better than anybody just because you're in the middle, right? It just means you don't really stand up for anything. And it's important, and like I said earlier, like if you can't find middle ground if you don't stand your ground. So one of the things I think that we should do is just abandon these labels of like progressive, moderate, conservative, moderate, liberal, all these like labels that we kind of use to define ourselves, and try to understand the ground that we stand on, right? And then try to understand the others ground that someone else's ground they stand on, right? So what makes someone who maybe you disagree with, what things that they find that is important and what things that you find that are important, and only then you can find common ground, right? So, and when you find common ground, that's when you can possibly love each other and work together and start actually solving some of these problems. So you're not going to do it from hubris by thinking you're better than everyone by just saying you're in the middle. I mean, you're not better than anybody. But if you try to work to understand and empathize with other people, right? Understand what your stances are, and then try to understand someone else's stances, and then try to combine the two or try to figure out the similarities between the two, we might get somewhere. So yeah, that didn't come out as
Sounds good, man.
elegant. Yeah, thank you. That didn't come out as elegant as I thought it would. Kind of rambled a little bit, but
It never does, but you were speaking from the heart. So, and I think
so
that goes back to something that I said in the previous episode.
yeah.
You don't have to like me. You don't have to think like me. You don't have to agree with my ideas.
Mm-hmm.
But you do have to respect them. You have to
Mm-hmm.
respect me as a person, and only then, when you're able to give and receive that same level of respect with other people, then you're more likely to maybe sit down and have a conversation and maybe open yourself up to different views.
Yeah.
One thing I did want to talk about, um, going back to the inauguration, and I think it's a moment that I didn't expect to be captured and make waves the way it did, but it did. I saw an article on it in GQ. There was a member of Kamala Harris's family out there wearing a
I
pair of
remember.
Dior Jordan 1s. And
Yep.
just in case, for those out there who don't know, those shoes go for like $2,000 on StockX, right? And the sneaker culture has really become a thing. I wouldn't call myself a sneakerhead or anything like that, but
What?
I have become a bit of a collector.
You're a sneakerhead. What are you talking
Nah,
about?
nah, I wouldn't call myself a sneakerhead, but I do. I mean, I'm into sneakers. I do buy. I do buy them. Whenever I get a chance.
Because you're a
But
sneakerhead.
I think I just think that that's a big moment right there. Like some people might just be like, "Oh, he had on Jordans. Like, who cares?"
Mhm.
But it's not just about the fact that he had on Jordans. Jordans are also representative of Black culture and street culture.
Mhm.
And for someone to wear something like that and at to an event like the inauguration is a big deal to me. it signals that continued shift away from the old ways of what used to be. There was a time when I started my career as a systems engineer that people were like, "Hey, like you can't have braids, you can't have your hair this way. You got to have that Caesar with the fade or the the all all the way around the side of your head, even or with the even Stevens. Gosh, I couldn't even think of it. You had to have your hair a certain way. You're not going to be hired. You have to look hireable. You have to look a certain way. And when you think about who was making that decision, who decided that you had to look a certain way, who made those rules, and, it certainly wasn't us, right? Because we are not going to say that you can't wear dreadlocks, or you can't wear Afrocentric hairstyles. And those Jordans being there once again is just, we continue to make our mark on the culture of this country. And to me, it's a big moment. Like, you have the HBCU guy out there as the vice president. You have somebody there wearing Jordans. Before it was, if you don't have them hard bottoms on at the club, you're not going to get in. You don't have on, a suit here, you can't do this, you can't do that. And now it's, it's shifting a little bit. And, I'm just really happy to see that. Like, it really just hit me right here. I know I'll never own a pair of Dior Jordans, but.
No, you're 1,000% right. Like, there's no standards. Like, we're pushing the envelope where it's okay to kind of have that type of attire and not be considered less classy or
Exactly.
right.
Exactly.
So like that's great. That was Kamala Harris's and her entourage. By the way, we didn't even mention that we will. Kamala Harris, first female Black
Asian, vice president.
Yeah, vice president. So checked off a lot of boxes there. But it just shows that we're living in a world where things don't have to be conformed, right? That you can truly be whatever you want to be and wear what you want to wear and still be respected, right? And that's super important to have. That's definitely a much more important moment than I thought of, but the way you phrase it, like, perfect sense, right?
Yeah.
So
I mean, just like everything to me, like right now, when I go into work, or when I used to go into work, I see guys with dreadlocks. I see the braids coming back, and to most people that might not be a big deal, but most people haven't had to think about what they look or sound like when they leave the house. Right. There was a book I read coming out of high school called Cool Pose. When I was a freshman, this guy gave it to me. He was a senior, and we'll have to do a book review on that one day. But basically, the premise of the book is that as a Black person, and specifically for Black men, but I think all Black people have had to do this, you have to come up with like a second persona when you leave the house. So, when you're around your friends, when you're around your family, you can be yourself. You can, just be, do that deep dive in the Black culture and do, what we do. But then, when you go to work, maybe take the bass. Some people take the bass out of your voice a little bit. Yeah. Maybe you change the way you talk, your accent, the colloquialisms that you use. You get rid of all that and you try to be the corporate person. And now it seems that the doors have opened to let a little bit more of yourself out there.
Yes.
So I appreciate that. And that book is an awesome book. So anybody that wants a good read, the book is called Cool Pose. It has like a little subtitle to it, but I think if you look it up, you'll find the right one. And I'll try to find it from my collection and show it here maybe in the next episode.
Yeah, no, I love it. Yeah, no, you're absolutely right. Like, funny thing, Nicholas, I don't have a problem with not having put in less bass. I wish I had more bass in my voice. I've always hated my voice. Every time, this is why I don't hardly listen to our podcast, because I hate how I sound. That's why I got this nicer microphone. It's like, man, I sound weak. Like,
Yeah, it's hard to listen to myself too. You know what I mean? But it is what it is.
yeah, but yeah, no, I mean, yeah, just so many good feels from this administration. It does feel like a new day. There's a lot of work to go through.
Yep.
Like I said, we're gonna be taking a break from like some of the political stuff because we just need a break.
Yes.
But
Next week,
yes,
DC Universe, Marvel Universe. We're gonna be talking about, who's better, who's worse. We already know who's worse right now, but I think things are gonna turn around. I think things are turning around. So I can't wait. I cannot wait for that episode.
Yeah. Well, hopefully, nothing drastic happens where we have to comment on that, like an assault on the U.S. Capitol and whatnot. But yeah, we've delayed so many things that we want to talk about just because of the nature of the last couple of months.
I still want to get into like a technology focused episode too, because I do want to talk about big tech censoring Trump and what that means and some of the other things that are happening in the tech world too. So
well, yeah,
stay tuned.